A very warm welcome to everyone joining on our webinar today on studying or especially applying to the UK, the US, or both. I'm very happy to welcome our different participants and especially our panelists. So yeah, great that you're all here. We will today cover the different admissions of the UK, the US, and then also applying to both countries at the same time. And then lastly, talk about how to choose an offer from the different countries. And after 30 minutes presentation of our panelists, we will move to a Q&A where you can just jump in, type your questions in the Q&A chat. If you're unknown with the Zoom function, it's down in the menu, and you can just type any question you have, and our panelists will give you their personal insights and will happily help you with your Q&A. So yeah, for everyone who's unknown about, who's not familiar with Project Access, we are a non-profit that is based all over the world with, at the moment, more than 160 team members from all over the world studying and working together to tackle inequalities in the higher education scheme. We are very renowned for our mentoring scheme, where you can get a one-to-one mentoring that will guide you through your entire application process, help you which universities to choose, help you with your standardized tests, personal statements, financing, etc., etc. So it's in case you're very unsure about how to apply and would love some support, the mentoring scheme is definitely a program that could support you in that. But Project Access is definitely more than that. We are a big movement that is that is working towards a more equal world, and definitely joining the PA community is more than just focusing on studying and applying. So you're joining today the Access Academy webinar. The Access Academy is basically our repository of knowledge in Project Access, and we're helping you with 3 pillars in the Access Academy. We're trying to help you to choose your academic path, your universities and degrees, to help you applying to your favorite universities, and in the end help you with going to university. So the aim of the Access Academy in general is to raise awareness and raise motivation in young students to be brave and apply to study abroad and apply to a top university, because there's so many students out there with a lot of potential that should definitely use their chance and just go for it. And our 3 wonderful panelists today are all young and driven members of the Project Access team, and I'm very happy to welcome all of you to talk today about the admission process of the UK, US, and both, and give you personal insights. So thank you first of all for joining us here. I would just go through a little round of introductions. So maybe Pooja, you can just give us a sentence about where you're from and where you're studying.
Sure. So my name is Pooja Nair. I'm from India and I study engineering at the University of Cambridge. I'm 19 years old and I'm going into my 2nd year right now.
Lovely. Thank you for being here, Pooja. What about you, Jennifer?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer and I am 18 years old. I am from Denmark and I'm in my last year of high school. So I'm currently right now doing both the applications to the US and the UK.
Very great to have you here as well. So you can see PA is not only a movement of actual students that are already going to university, but also younger members that are still in the process of applying. It's great to have you here, Jennifer. And our 3rd panelist will be Oliver. What are you doing, Oliver?
Hey, I'm Oliver. I'm 22 years old and I'm from Denmark. I'm a bit of a late runner to university, so I'm going into my 2nd year studying management science at University College London.
Lovely. So I'm very excited to hear a bit more about applying to the UK and the US. I myself, I'm Mali, and I'm studying PP at King's College in my second year now, and yeah, very excited to learn a bit more about applying to the US as well from my side. So Ali, just give it a go and start with the UK admission process.
Cool. So I've got the pleasure of speaking a bit about how it is applying to the UK, and I actually come with a background. For those of you that are very interested in the US and the UK, I actually have the background of having applied in the US, being rejected by all of them, and then applying successfully in the UK. So I'll try to kind of briefly put it in the context of the kind of differences between the two admission processes. But both of them really starts with you having to decide on what kind of degree you would like to do and at which university you think, one, you would be interested in pursuing this degree, but also which one you think you would fit the best in, because it's also about the kind of experience you have there. And so what I would recommend you to do, and what I also did myself, at least some of it, is to like just read about different courses, colleges, universities. I spend hours and hours on first reading about the US, and obviously there's like a way different, like a wholly different kind of schooling system or university system in the US. So that took a lot of time for me because it was very different to what I'm kind of presented for in Denmark. So like I would say read about the different courses, colleges and universities until you are at a point where you feel quite confident about which course and degree you would like to, university and degree you would like to apply to. What it's not mentioned, what I would also really recommend you to do is to try to find people who currently study that degree or at that university and speak with them. And Project Access is obviously a very kind of good platform for that. If you have a mentor, that mentor will most likely be studying at exactly the degree and university you dream the most about. But this is obviously, you will be applying for a mentor when you are at a stage where you're fairly certain around which university and degree you're applying to. So in the very beginning, read about it. Then when you're fairly certain, I would say go speak with people about it, people who have done it. So that's the kind of first step. Obviously, when you read about it, it's also super important that you check their entry requirements. In the UK, it's explicitly put on each of the universities' websites. So there can be requirements about what is the minimum GPA you need to even be considered when you apply. But there can also be requirements like, or you need to have studied biology to go into medicine, or math to go into economics or similar things. And then obviously coming from Project Access myself, and this is something I didn't have access to back then, but I know the value of it, hence that, which is like I would strongly recommend you to use the Access Academy's resources. They're freely available, even if you haven't been applied to get a mentor with Project Access. So definitely go and explore those resources. And I think a final kind of point on this kind of early stage before you are fairly certain is take everything you read online with a grain of salt. There are a lot of different opinions out there, and choosing between universities and degrees is, well, for both of them, is really a very subjective thing. So try not to be like driven by others' opinions. And finally, also don't lean too much to the rankings. I would say that's at least my personal opinion, because they don't really represent like teaching. They rather represent the research at that university. When you're then at this kind of fairly certain stage of which universities and degree you want to apply to, before you even go and register and apply with UCAS, I would say apply for mentor with project access, because that mentor is also key to have in registering and filling out the UCAS. So UCAS is basically this kind of central platform for applying to all British universities. So you just make one application and it's sent out to up to 5 different options. So 5 different university degree combinations. For registering and applying, you register with the UCAS. You fill in the application form. It's fairly easy. There's some basic questions, but there's also some questions which are quite tricky to fill out if you're an international. And that's where I think a mentor can really come in valuable, because they know what to fill, because they did it the year before, or a few years before. The most tricky part about applying in the UK is, at least until the stage of having sent your application, is the person writing the personal statement. So the personal statement is a 4,400 words, no character essay, I believe, or statement, where you are really just supposed to basically show, don't tell, your passion for the degree you're applying to. So really, and try to keep that as academic as possible. You write the personal statement. It will take you 15 drafts before you got a good one. It does really take a lot of time, at least for most people. And then one thing which is super key to keep in mind with the UCAS application form, I would say there's 2 things that's really important here. One is the personal statement, because it takes so long time and so many iterations, but also the reference from a teacher, one of your former teachers or current teachers, depending on your study station. And that teacher simply have to kind of write about your academic achievements, any kind of things that has impacted the results you have on your qualifications. And it's super important that you kind of get that started, so that you're not kind of, this is the only thing which is dependent on other persons. So don't invite that teacher 5 days before the deadline, because then the teacher is like, if the teacher doesn't fill it out within the 5 days, you basically can't send your application. So get that started and make sure to follow up on it. The kind of very final thing to really keep in mind here is the application deadlines. And if you're applying to Oxford, Cambridge, all degrees at those universities, or if you apply to medicine, veterinary medicine, or veterinary sciences and dentistry at other universities, you will have to apply already the 15th of October. The kind of regular deadline for all other undergrad courses is the 15th of January. For some art and design courses, it will be in March even. And there are also kind of late deadlines for undergraduate courses, which is end of June. So this is how the process will look for everyone. Then 2 final notes is that if you are applying to specific universities or degrees, it will mainly be Oxbridge or Oxford or Cambridge. You will also have to do a aptitude assessment. So like that could be the TSA test for some courses at Oxford or Cambridge, where it's like a set of math and similar questions, logic questions. You'll have to sit that, and it's not really mentioned in UCAS. You have to be aware of that by yourself. So read up on that. And secondly, you might be invited to interviews, which I believe most places will be online this year. But definitely keep that in mind, and really make sure that when you decide on your 5 choices, that you know about this and that you don't kind of miss any deadlines for this.
Okay, thank you, Oliver. Now we're going to talk a little bit about applying to the US. And if no one of you knows about applying to the US, it's a very complicated process. It takes a little time. So having a mentor would really help you. It has helped me a lot on applying. So what I would say is start early, do your research, and by doing your research, look at the many factors you would like for an institution in the US. Because in the US, there's over 4,000 different universities or institutions. So look at factors like the location or the academic interest that you have. The financial aid, it varies a lot with the financial aid from institution to institution, especially regarding international students. So yeah, I started already in September 2019, and I haven't really 100% decided yet which institutions I will apply to in the US. So it takes a lot of time on doing your research, and you can, for instance, use Niche or the FIS Guide or Colleges That Change Lives to do your research about the different institutions. I wanted to talk a little bit about the application portals. So the most common one that's used is the Common Application. But there's also some different ones that I've listed on the slide. But the most common one that I mentioned before is the Common Application. Over 900 institutions use the Common Application. So many international students find this very convenient to use too. On Common App, you'll find an application fee, and that varies by institution to institution. And this pays for your processing of your application, and it's non-refundable unless you request a fee waiver. Sorry. So in the Common Application, you will have to write an essay. This is the Common App essay. Maybe you've heard of it before. Maybe you've seen it on YouTube. It's the essay where you actually get to show your personality through your way of writing. You get to show your qualities, your values, and your characters, or your character. And this is sent to all institutions that you apply through Common App. And then we have the standardized tests. So this year, many institutions in the US have gone test optional, but normally there's some standardized tests that is required when applying to a US institution. The most common ones, or there are two ones, the SAT and the ACT, and then you have to take the SAT subject test too. And it's very common for people to actually take them multiple times to get a fitting score to the universities that you're applying to, because each institution have different requirements regarding the test scores. So you have to check with each institution. Normally on their website, they will have listed which requirements they have of the test scores. And if you're not a good test taker, this is something I just wanted to tell you. Maybe you will consider applying to a university that has gone test optional this year, or next year are test optional, or yeah, they are test optional too. Because many institutions in the US do actually not require the SAT or ACT too. Then we have the English tests. Is also a very essential part of applying to the US as an international student, because you have to demonstrate that you are actually okay in with speaking English. It's the most common ones that's used are TOEFL and IELTS. They are commonly accepted by the universities in the US and the UK too. But I would say if you're applying only to the US, maybe you would look at TOEFL, because that's one accepted by most universities in the US. But the prompts and the requirements of the TOEFL scores will also change every year. So you have to check with all of the institutions that you're applying to, which requirements they have for the TOEFL test. But what I have noticed this year is that the most competitive applicants to the top tier universities in the US will require you to have a score of at least 100 on the internet-based TOEFL test. And then I want to talk a little bit about the extracurriculars, because the extracurriculars is what is going to define you as a person without your academics or besides your academics. But the admissions office don't want to see a very long list of monthly commitments. They want to see that you as a person have committed to something, and they want to see a diversity, and they want well-rounded students in general, because their admissions process is holistic. So they look at your academic profile, they look at what you've done besides the school, and then they want to see that you have committed, that you have shown that you have actually not just slept on your couch while you've not been in school. But a little bit I wanted to note to that part is that you don't have to make a long list to impress the admissions office, because they will be able to tell if you've just committed to something for a month or for a week, just to show off on your CV or on your resume or on your application in general. They will be able to look through your application and see that that you have not made a true commitment. So another thing about applying to the US is also applying for financial aid, which often comes after you've applied for actual admission. Yeah, so what I wanted to say about the financial aid is actually to make sure that your parents are aware of that you will need their financial information from the 2 past years. Because financial aid is often based on how much you need, but it can also be based on merit, and your test results can actually be used. Oh, sorry. Sorry, background noise. I have a family here too. But what I wanted to say is that test scores can actually help you when you're applying for financial aid that is merit-based. But it's not all institutions in the US that actually offers financial aid to international students. So you will have to do your research, and not if you want to apply for financial aid, if you want some funding and some help with paying for your tuition. Yes, for the last bit, I wanted to talk a little bit about the deadlines too. There are different deadlines when applying to the US. There's the early deadlines, which is the early action and the early decision. And the difference between those two are that is that when applying early action, you apply early and you get your answer, your decision early. You will often apply in November and then get your decision in December. But the early decision, you also apply in November, but if you get accepted, it's binding. So you're obligated to attend university, and the institutions will require that you've done your research about your tuition and about the institution, because you are you're obligated to attend the university if you're accepted. So they want you to have looked into how whether or not you can pay for the tuition. But yeah, then we have the regular decision, which is in January. It's often the 1st of January or January 2nd. And you get your decision in March or April. And then we have the rolling admissions, which not many institutions use, but some will use this. And it's actually basically that you just apply whenever their application is open, and then you will get your answer or your decision to your application like rolling through the months. But I wanted to emphasize also that each US institution sets their own admissions requirements and standards. And then they also decide themselves which applicants actually meet those standards. And it varies from one year to another. So maybe someone with a similar profile got into an institution last year and you don't get in this year, or the other way around. And you don't have to take it, you shouldn't take it personal, because it is what it is, and it varies a lot from year to year. And you also have to remember that you are competing with prospective international students from all around the globe for a limited number of spaces on these top tier universities. So it's good to have options. It's good to have I wouldn't say backups, but similar schools that you will be just as heavily to attend, because it is a limited amount of space there is on these institutions, and it is competitive. I'm not gonna lie, it is competitive. So it would be very nice to have someone who can help you with the process, someone who's gone through the process themselves and know not exactly what to write, but kind of how to structure your application, so it fits the school, so you will have the best possible chance of actually getting admitted into the institution. Yes, so applying to both the US and the UK, I cannot emphasize this enough. Start early. It's so much research that you have to do for both countries. And you have to do your research a lot if you are trying to apply to both the UK and the US, and reflect on which kind of institution that you want, because the two countries have two different educational systems. The US is 3 years, the US is 4 years, and the UK is 3 years. The UK For the UK, you will already have to know what you kind of want to study already. The US gives you another year, like your freshman year, to actually reflect on different courses, and you normally don't have to choose your major until your sophomore year, which is the second year of school. So reflect on what kind of degree you want, what kind of institution or atmosphere or people that you want to be around, and what kind of environment you want to be into. It's an entire education that you are going to apply to. So make sure that you're prepared that you're prepared and that you've done your research for the institutions. I also wanted to say now that you have to know that it's going to be a stressful, very stressful process. I am stressed out about my applications already, and I haven't even started my UK one yet, which I probably should have. But having a mentor for that has really been so helpful for me. I think she's saved me from so many mental breakdowns now, because it is a lot of work, and applying to two different countries and two different educational systems also require you to do two different kind of statements and essays, and it's different things that you would need. So it's a lot of work, but planning is very, very important. So plan out when you are going to take the test, when you're going to write your essays, when you're going to, if there's any webinars or if there's any workshops or anything that you want to attend, plan it out, make sure that you don't miss anything, because you would really want all the help you can need, you can get right now, because you're going to need it. And I wanted to tell you that taking the tests would be a very good idea. Especially the English tests, even though that many institutions may not require them in the UK, they will be required in the US. So take them. It will not affect your application in a negative way. And then I wanted to tell you that this is in fact hard to actually manage everything. So my tips for managing both to the US applications both to the US and the UK would be: make one email for institution specific things. So use this one email to sign up to information sessions, to for your application in general, so you don't get it mixed with everything else in your inbox, in your personal email inbox, because it would be a shame to miss anything that has anything has anything to do with your applications to these countries. And especially when you're applying to two countries, that's going to be a lot of emails. And then I would encourage you to make a spreadsheet and keep track of the different dates that your application stuff and supplements are due to. For instance, as Oliver mentioned before, there's different deadlines for your application process in the US or in the UK, and there is in the US as well, as I mentioned. And so there's going to be a lot of dates that you want to keep track of. So make a spreadsheet. That would be very helpful for you. And then I just wanted to emphasize here at the end that this is how it looks right now, and I cannot assure you that this will look the same at the next admission cycle, because everything changes and everything has been so chaotic with the COVID-19 pandemic. So make sure that you check the university website and the university updates for any current things that's going on, and for information.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I will now be talking about how to choose between the US and UK once you've applied and once you've got offers. So I myself, as Jennifer and Oliver did, applied to both the US and UK. And a fun fact I like telling everyone is that I applied to 22 universities. I do not recommend that. Don't do that. But I did. And finally, I think what I found the hardest was actually choosing between one particular university in the US and one in the UK. So I finally had a choice between the University of Cambridge and this university called Olin College. So the thing is, they were both totally different. The fact that Cambridge is this large institution, has been there for hundreds of years, is well recognized, whereas Olin was much smaller, only lets like 85 students in a year, relatively new. And even the way they taught, so Olin was a lot more project based, whereas Cambridge was really lecture based and theory based. So I finally, the sort of the way I chose was by considering the following factors. So first was academics. So you should consider the teaching style. So once you have your universities with you, you should think, okay, which teaching style am I most suited to? Which university will fit me well? Where will I sort of flourish the best? Think about exams. So say in the US, you're continuously tested. You have sort of tests and exams and assignments almost weekly, if almost monthly, if not weekly. Whereas in the UK, it's usually just one final exam every year that counts. Your focus of your study. So in the US, again, you'll have a much sort of broader view. You'll be able to study a lot of different subjects. Whereas in the UK, usually expected to just narrow down on one subject and study that. For me, that was something I wanted. I preferred to just have one subject that I could study as opposed to having multiple. So that's one reason I chose the UK finally. Then you should think about the duration of your degree. As Jennifer mentioned, the UK, you have 3 years for a bachelor plus 1 year for master's, whereas in the US, it's usually 4 years for undergrad, and I think 1 or 2 years for master's. Cost is again something you should consider. So for me, I think at the end, there wasn't much of a difference between the two universities in terms of cost. However, depending on the university that you apply to, one place might be cheaper for you than the other. Distance is again something that actually really mattered to me, because the UK, while obviously far away from where I live, was only a 9-hour flight. So the time difference was much easier to handle in the UK. Other than that, financial aid, as Jennifer mentioned, you typically get financial aid in the US. There are two kinds. You get need-based and merit-based. So in the US, a lot of universities, you don't even really need to apply for merit-based aid. They give you aid based on the score. So for example, I didn't even have to apply, and a number of universities gave me merit-based aid based on my SAT scores and various other parts of my application. However, the UK is not as keen on giving aid, especially merit-based aid. I don't even think they give it to international students, but I'm not sure. And even financial aid is, it's only if you're extremely in need of it, will you get it. Work opportunities. So again, it depends on the field that you're going into. Usually in the US, tech is supposed to have a better sort of workplace, and you're able to get into a lot more internships, but that may depend on the field that you're studying in. So finally, I would advise that you make a spreadsheet with the universities you wish to attend and the factors to consider when choosing between the universities, and rate them on a score of 1 to 10. This is something I did. Unfortunately, it won't guarantee you a proper choice, because I think I chose one university and then like 10 days later, I'm like, no, I'm not going to choose that. I'm going to choose another one. So I think if there's one thing you take away, is that it's okay to not know what you want to do or what you want to study, because I don't think anyone really expects an 18-year-old to really know what they want to do. But just be happy when you have a choice between universities to choose from. It's always a good thing. So just be happy that you've come so far, and you will make the choice that's right for you.
Thank you, Pooja, for elaborating on that. And thank you, of course, also Ollie and Jennifer for explaining us a little bit more about the admissions in the UK and the US. I hope you all could learn something and maybe raise some new awareness about the application process. So we will now go over to the Q&A, and you're very welcome to type down any question you have on your mind into our Q&A chat, and our panelists will happily answer them for you. We already do have 2 questions, so we're just gonna start with the first question. How did you manage applications to both the US and UK? Well, I think, Jennifer, you elaborated on this already, but maybe you just want to sum it up in one sentence again.
I can try in one sentence. It's a lot of information. But yeah, I would recommend doing a spreadsheet, to be honest. There is a lot of information that you will need to keep track of. So yeah, do make a spreadsheet and get a mentor who can help you with all of this information that you have to process while you're doing your application processes to both countries.
Yeah, and I will also just say, if you're still like a year before you're going to apply, do make sure you try to get the tests out of the way, probably a year before you apply, because that will really help you focus on your actual applications when you have to apply. So do try to get the tests out of the way as early as possible.
Thank you, Pooja. Another question is, how many schools is a good number to apply to in the US if you're applying to the UK as well? What do you think, Jennifer?
I think it varies a lot from person to person. I think you have to make it up with yourself how much time you actually have, because applying to like any application process is kind of like a part-time job, because it's a lot of things that you have to do. You have to take the tests, and you have to do your essays, which you have to do very thoroughly. So you have to be aware that it's going to take a lot of time. So it actually depends on how much time you think you have. But I wouldn't say more than 6 to 8 universities in the US. Because in the UK, it's 5 institutions. You can choose up to 5 institutions on your UCAS application. And then I believe it's one statement that goes out to all of the universities. Yeah, I can see all the universities. Yeah, he's agreeing. But it isn't that way in the US. So no more than 6 to 8, I think. Yeah.
How many did you apply to, Ollie and Pooja?
I can go first. I applied to 5 universities, but I didn't apply to the UK at the same time. I think that's like Jennifer touched upon, it's a matter of, by each university you add to that list, you also add more work, opposite to in UK. So it's really a balance. And there's also, I think, like one thing here, at least from my perspective, I haven't done both at the same time, is like you can also do a prioritized list and start off from the top, the biggest priority, go down, and when you don't want to do any more, or when you feel like you don't have the motivation to do more of them, because it is also a matter of motivation to write all of those, then stop, because then you won't make a good application, and then you have already done your top priorities anyway. So that's one way to go about it.
Interesting point. Thank you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I applied to way too many, and it's not a good number. But I think so for, again, as the UK, it's just one application that you need to send out to 5 universities, so I don't think it's a big issue. However, in the US, Jennifer mentioned you have to write many essays for each university that you apply to. So 6 to 8 is a good number. And what I think is a good idea is to have 3 different categories of universities that you apply to in the US. So you have your reach universities, your target, and your safety. So your reach universities are the ones that, they're probably the best, like the Harvard, MIT, Stanford, that, that you would love to get into, but you're not sure if you will. Then you have your target universities, which are the universities that you think you have a good chance of getting into. And you have your safety universities that are ones that you know for sure you will get into. So this way you have backup options, even if you don't get into your top choice university.
Thank you, Pooja. The next question is from Frederick. I'm considering applying to a master's in the UK. Is it too late to begin the process now if I would like to begin next summer, fall? Is anyone familiar with, the undergraduate study? So yeah, Ali, go ahead.
I'm not 100% familiar with it, but I'm quite confident that it's not too late. You'll have to do a bit of a trickier test, I believe, depending on what you're applying to, but you'll have to do, most likely you'll have to do a test which is needs somewhat of a, well, quite a lot of preparation. But you should be able to manage, I think.
Okay, good luck, Frederick. I hope you will still be able to apply. The next question is in regards to you again, Pooja. Hey, Pooja, how did you manage 22 applications?
To be very honest, I did not. I was just sort of hurrying around trying frantically to apply, but that was mainly because I didn't know what I wanted to study. So I was applying both for design and engineering, which is why I applied to so many different universities. I think the only reason I could manage at all was because I did a lot of the prep for my US university application since I knew I wanted to go abroad since I was like 14 years old. So I sort of started mentally preparing, and I had done the preparation for all my tests and essays the year before for US. So it was really just the UK application that I had to do within a month. So I was still able to somehow manage getting through it. So yeah, I think as Jennifer said, the key is just early preparation.
Wow, very impressive. The next question would be, because of the pandemic and the H-1B visa problems going on, is it wise to apply for masters in the US? Well, I can just tell you, if you're interested in US admissions, on the 27th of August, we will have another Project Access Academy webinar on US admission in regards to the pandemic. So please have a look at the Access Academy webpage and yeah, sign up for our webinar on US admissions, where our lovely member Nina will elaborate on that and will probably be able to answer this question for you. Another question is it easy to get a waiver when applying to the US? The waiver, sorry.
I didn't apply, so I have no clue, to be honest.
I can tell you a little bit about it. So I know that I haven't applied for it yet, but I know that it can be a little bit tricky to request a fee waiver for the US applications, because they will require you to provide them with some information about your financial status or your family's financial status, and then they will on that decide whether or not you will be eligible for a fee waiver. But it's kind of like a thumb rule, if you can say it like that, that you have to actually really not be able, like, that you really cannot pay for your applications. Yeah, that's one of the only ways that you can actually get a fee waiver. It's meant for that, for people who cannot financially manage to apply to many universities. So yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. So the next question, actually, two questions. Until recently, I was planning to take a gap year after my final year of high school, which is now. However, I've become more interested in starting already next year. But is it simply too late? Not deadline-wise, but work-wise. And if so, is taking a gap year a possibility, or would that be problematic for my application? So maybe Ollie, you can talk about gap years in terms.
Oh yes. I think first of all, this really depends on whether you're applying to the US and the UK, which I don't think is stated here. Oops, now you removed the question. So if you're applying to the UK, you can definitely, work-wise and like deadline-wise, you can definitely still make it to apply for starting next year. US-wise, you can give it a go, but I think you'll be slightly disadvantaged compared to deciding on taking that gap year. I would say though that obviously the kind of process costs money and stuff like that, but there's also valuable learnings in applying and then being rejected. And I think, for instance, I was rejected to all US colleges I applied to, but had I applied the year after, I would probably had a lot of learnings I could use and make a better application. So that's probably like, you could potentially just do both. In terms of gap years and whether that kind of harms your application, I actually took 2 gap years, mainly because of my university applications. Applied like halfway through my first gap year to the US, and halfway through my second gap year to the UK. And in the UK, gap year is definitely not a very kind of normal thing. So they might look a bit kind of, what did you expect? Like, you basically, and I think this is the case for both countries, you basically need to be able to show them that you have done something meaningful in those gap years. It's easier when you do it for just 1 gap year, because then you've just had a half gap year and they don't expect that much, I think. Whereas if you have 2 gap years, you really need to show that you've done something very meaningful, like in regards to what you also plan to study. I guess that's the kind of best answer I can give to that.
I can, for instance, tell like from my experience in Germany and also of my like German friends in London. Most of them took a gap year actually after finishing high school. So it is very, very common to take a gap year and still be able to be offered a place at a top university. So don't worry about it.
I think maybe a quick add is also, you will most likely, well, it also depends on what you're doing in your gap year, but you might also find yourself with more time in a gap year to actually make a solid application. So that's also something to consider. Yeah,
I think if it's UK is your final destination, then I think you can definitely give it a go this year, because I think 1 month is enough to prepare for your UK applications, especially if you're applying to Oxford. If not, you still have 3 months, which is good. But US, probably a gap year might just make your application stronger. But either way, I don't think it's going to harm your application taking a gap year.
Thank you, Pooja. The next question is from Christian. Although SAT, ACT aren't required for this year's applications to, for instance, Harvard, do you believe that applicants would achieve a competitive advantage by submitting a strong SAT, ACT score relative to applicants who have left out the SAT or ACT?
I can go first. My opinion on this is, they still know what the usual score on a SAT or ACT is. So if you provide a strong SAT or ACT score, they will take that into account and say, okay, that is like a strong candidate. That's not to say that people who don't submit them are necessarily like, being harmed by not submitting them. But I think if you send a strong one, like, why should it not make your candidacy stronger?
Okay, thank you, Ali. Jennifer, do you want to add something to that?
Yes, I actually wanted to add that this year many institutions have gone test optional, and so I know that, for instance, Harvard and I believe Yale has as well, has actually signed for being test optional when they say they're test optional, which means that if you don't submit any SAT scores or SAT scores, you will not be disadvantaged in any way. So, of course, submitting scores and especially strong scores will impact your application in a positive way. not submitting them will not impact your application in a negative way. So that I think I just wanted to emphasize that it's really up to you whether or not you want to submit a score or not. You don't have to rush out and take the test now if it's inconvenient for you to take them now, just because you want a strong score and a strong application. Because yeah, these institutions have in fact signed for being test optional this year. Yes.
The next question is from Kamiji. Is the procedure for master's application different from that of undergraduate, both in the UK and the US? I can just go first and maybe let you know that also the Access Academy has a webinar on postgraduate applications in the UK and US with students that apply to both countries and to different universities ranging from Oxford to UCL to Cambridge and Columbia. So have a look at this webinar to maybe have an insight on the postgraduate application. But I don't know if any of our panelists want to give another note on that question.
I think for the UK, it is quite different. I believe, and this is not something I fully know, but I believe that you don't have this kind of central platform, first of all, like with the UCAS for undergraduate. You apply to each university independently. And I believe the process also usually, I think there'll be more kind of tests and stuff like that than for undergraduate. For the US, I have a hard time imagining that it's the same thing, undergraduate and graduate or master. But again, I don't really know this. It's just my gut feeling, I guess.
Well, if you don't only want to trust into the gut feeling, have a look at the webinar. I can definitely advise you this. And in general, all other Access Academy webinars are always freely accessible on our webpage. And if you're still unsure about which academic path to choose, you can always have a look over there and listen to some personal insights from students, which might definitely help you. So yeah. Adam is asking, hey Ollie, hey Oliver, did you get any financial aid? If so, how did you go about getting it? I think you're muted right now.
Oops, there we go. A rookie mistake. I assume this is because Adam is Danish, most likely. And I actually did secure a few kind of grants or scholarships or whatever we call them. What I basically did, so this is not, well, it is kind of relevant because the kind of structure can be applied to most countries where there are scholarships or grants for people going abroad to study. In Denmark, in this specific case, there's not really that many for undergraduate studies, especially not in the UK, but there are a few and you should definitely apply to them if you have the time for it. What I did is basically you going back to the tool of using a spreadsheet, which we've said a few times in this webinar. I made a spreadsheet on application deadline, name, where I found it, amount, etc., etc., etc. What was the requirements, and basically made a full overview first. Then I wrote a kind of template application, made my budget, kind of copied my kind of offer letter, and stuff like that. So kind of, I would generally say if you are to apply for grants, that being in Denmark, in another country, or in this country you'll be studying in, do apply such structure to it. Otherwise, you'll most likely miss out on the really relevant ones, because it is a very big jungle. So yeah, that's how I did it in brief. Yeah.
Thank you for the insight. Maybe Jennifer and Pooja, do you have other insights or experiences with financial aid you would like to share with this panel? Or Jennifer, what are your plans for?
Actually, maybe a fun note is, while I did secure some, I don't think I mentioned this, I did secure some grants, I think free. It's like by no means covering my undergraduate fees or my fees or living costs or whatever. So it's a nice amount. It's, well, that's no secret. It's around like £2,500. So like, what is that? Around 3,000 euros. So that puts it into perspective in terms of the price of studying in the UK, but also the US. That being said, like financial aid in the US is a much bigger thing, especially from the universities, where it's not a thing in the UK. Yeah, sorry for interrupting there.
No worries.
Yeah, in the US, I don't remember much, but I do know so there are some universities that are need blind. Which is basically, if you get into that university, they will make sure that you can go there. If financial issues are a problem, they will supply you with as much money as you need to go to that university. But again, that depends on the university, and you should really do your research beforehand. US again has merit-based scholarships, which you will get based on your SAT and ACT scores. UK, so I think Cambridge, for example, I think the college that I applied to did send out like a form to apply for financial aid, but that was only if I was able to show that my family didn't earn enough to send me there. But so that only depends on how, the whole financial aspect of it, and if you qualify for financial aid, only then will you be likely to receive it in the UK.
Thank you, Pooja. Jennifer, did you already start planning financial questions?
Yes, I did. I have done it actually. I've thought about it a lot because of the pandemic. So you never know how a financial situation is going to look like. You actually don't know what anything is going to look like. So I have planned that I will be applying for financial aid and grants here in Denmark, and then if Adam is from Denmark, I can tell him that you can take your SU, which is the government paid. How would you define SU, Oliver?
So SU is basically like the government paying for you studying.
Yeah, like
the Danish government.
Some support, some financial support from the government, and you can bring that with you abroad if you want to. Yeah, if you want to, so that can help you pay something there. But financial aid is, as Pooja mentioned before, at many institutions need met, which means, as Pooja also mentioned, that they will try their very best to meet your need. You can also make sure that you apply for institutions that are need blind when you're choosing an institution, which means that they won't look at your financial background before you're applying. So that your admission will be regardless of how your financial situation is. And when you're doing your research, which I did, I was looking very much. It was a very important factor for me that the institution that I'm going to choose offers financial aid for international students, because many institutions in the US actually don't do that. So make sure that you find an institution that fits you well also on your financial aspect. That's what I did.
No, and there, once again, definitely Project Access is a way to guide you through this entire process and to get resources on different scholarships from. But I think if you start thinking about admission, you should always also start thinking about funding. And there are quite a few, like for instance in Germany, quite a few scholarships where you need to apply in the very beginning when you send off your application to the universities as well. So definitely keep that in mind while doing the admission process. Another question is, does internships and work experience matter a lot for the admission?
I in the UK, they, especially if you apply to Oxford or Cambridge, they don't matter more or less at all. In London, they don't really matter that much neither. In the US, I believe it's a major part of the application process or application. But correct me if I'm wrong here, Pooja, but I think that's like in short what it is.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily have to be internship or work experience. Even just extracurriculars in the field that you enjoy is really important for the US. UK, I wouldn't go so far to say that they don't care at all, because
Yeah.
I was able to submit like my design portfolio and stuff even while applying to Cambridge, or at least able to showcase it during my interview. But obviously it's not something you need when applying to the UK. As Oliver said, you can get in the best universities without showing any work experience or internships. US, you will definitely benefit from showing these, but again, it's not 100% necessary to have it, as long as you have some sort of extracurriculars.
I think maybe to correct myself a bit here is, as soon as it gets really like too far away from being academic, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But that probably also kind of goes hand in hand with what Pooja said.
Yeah. Just to add on the US part, so the US will review you as you as a student in a holistic way. So you have to show that you do something besides your academics too. It doesn't necessarily have to be work experience or internships, but it will impact your application in a positive way. Because you will show that you do something outside of school, that you have some interests in some different areas. The universities and the institutions in the US look for diversity in their students. They want a holistic person. They want to welcome a holistic person to their campus. So having something that you can show them that you're interested in, that you have done outside of school, that you have been working with, or something like that, will just help you stand a little bit out of from the crowd, or make you who you are besides the academics. Because to the top tier universities, there's going to be so many top students from around the globe who's going to apply. So if they only look at test scores, it's going to be impossible to choose which students to welcome to their campus. So they look for the diversity in their students and in the applications.
Great note, thank you, Jennifer. So maybe lastly, you can just tell us a bit like where you got yourself your help from in the admission process, if it was PA itself, or if it was friends or family. So maybe we can end on that note. Do you want to start, Pooja?
Sorry. Yeah, so for me, I mainly got help with, so I had a bit of help from school, but not that much, because not a lot of people from my school had really applied abroad or gone to Oxbridge. So I had a counselor that helped me outside of school. Unfortunately, I did not know about Project Access, but I am sure it would have been really helpful, because even when trying to choose a university, having someone who goes to that university is really important, because I spoke to a lot of students while I was trying to make a choice, like what is the life like at university. So I'm pretty sure you will really benefit from a PA mentor if you do choose to apply for one.
You want to go next, Jennifer?
Yes, actually it's kind of a little bit of the same situation that I've been in Denmark. Because not many go abroad, or it's not common to go abroad, because education here is free. Actually, so many people tend to stay at home and don't really seek abroad, and therefore there's also not as much help to get about on a topic. So I applied for a mentor at Project Access, which has been amazing, not biased at all. It has been so helpful for me to have a mentor. Actually, Oliver was my like unofficial mentor for my UK part, and it has been so great. It has really helped me like look through so many things and look at different aspects that I wouldn't have thought of before, because I will admit that I have been maybe a little bit too much into the rankings. So I actually did not look at the many factors that actually are very essential when looking at different universities. And after I've chosen the universities, it has been more than helpful to get like insights and help on the applications in general, because I come from the national school system. So having someone who knows how to translate your grades, or how to write these specific things in a specific way that actually fits the Common App or the UK application has been so helpful for me. Also, I've gotten a lot of help elsewhere too, through Project Access and another organization we have in Denmark too. But my main resources has been, or one of my main resources has been my mentor at Project Access. That's something I really encourage people to apply for. Yeah, I'm not biased.
For the Danish participants here, that organization is NSEC, I believe.
Yeah, it is. They do a conference every
well.
year with institutions, which I attended last year.
Yeah. I also just see, I actually got another question here from an anonymous attendee who wants to apply to UCL for master. So first of all, I'm studying undergraduate, even though I'm freaking old. That being said, so like take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I don't think you're too late for admission in 2021. I believe you can still apply, and I believe you have a kind of fairly good timeline as well. Obviously not being aware of the timeline, but I think you do have a fairly good timeline. And also when it comes to the English test, or the IELTS, if it is the same as for undergraduate, you should probably confirm this somewhere. Then you actually don't need it when you apply, so you will just get a conditional offer. That's actually something I didn't say when I had my slide on the UK, but you can actually either get a conditional offer or an unconditional offer. So unconditional offer is when you get that, you can basically start university. Whereas you can also get a conditional offer, which can be conditional on you getting the grades that teachers predicted for you if you're in school. But it can also, actually for my case, I was done with high school, but I hadn't taken the English test when I applied. So my UCL offer was actually conditional on me getting a certain score in the English test. So I believe that's the same kind of scenario you could come into in applying for a master's program at UCL. But yeah, you'll definitely have to confirm everything I just said. Don't hold me up on it. In terms of my own application process, very similar story, Jennifer and Pooja. So I think instead of just repeating that, probably like to emphasize how important it is to have these kind of sources of support. I, for instance, my essays, well, my personal statement, I've had a brief amount of support, only like very, very brief. But like my personal statements were definitely not good. Speaking of the extracurriculars earlier, I wrote almost my whole personal statement for UK on extracurriculars, and universities like directly told me that was the case. They rejected me. Well, LSE did. And I also went into interviews at Oxford having no clue whatsoever what I did, and I miserably failed my first interview. And I'm like 100% certain here that had I known one who had done it before, and I could have spoken with that person before and kind of spoken about what happens when you had interviews, I would definitely not have done the same things. I would definitely not have kind of, submitted a personal statement filled with extracurricular activities. And it's the same story for the US. When I applied in the US, I had interviews with Princeton and Stanford where I don't know what I was doing. So yeah, same story, and there is a really, it can be a make it or break it factor, I think, in most cases actually.
Yeah, and once again, I think Project Access and the Access Academy are both super helpful platforms to raise awareness and motivation from the student side. So if you're interested, check out our webpage and see if some Access Academy resources can help you, or if you yourself would like to sign up as a mentee to our mentoring scheme and join this movement together. I'm sure nobody will regret it. So yeah, all in all, thank you all for joining this Q&A. If you still have any questions in mind, or you would prefer to speak to someone personally, you will have the email addresses on the slide, and you can always come back to the video on YouTube because we're collecting all the webinars on our YouTube channel. So thank you, Jennifer, Ollie, and Pooja for taking the time and sharing your personal experience. It was very interesting from my side to learn some new things as well. So also, if anyone has a question about the Access Academy or would like to have another topic covered or learn more about our work, definitely ping me a message. I'm always very happy to hear from everyone. So yeah, thank you all, and have a lovely afternoon. All the best and good luck with your admissions.
Good luck.
Bye.